This is Tampa Home Talk.
I love the new Facebook view. Wow.
Hey, okay, good, because I hit a button real quick and I wasn't sure if we were still live. Are we?
Oh, yeah, and I'll tell you, that looks Hollywood now. You can see everything perfect.
Okay, tell me this too, Pat. Can you hear what is coming through the studio lines on our Facebook Live?
Not yet, because, no, I can't hear that. I just hear you.
You cannot. Okay.
No.
I plugged it in and apparently did it all wrong.
We'll take a look at that during the break.
We'll have the engineer figure it out. He'll be able to fix it for sure.
Leo came from Barrel Engineering and Inspection and Sound Quality Control.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And, of course, our little monkey in the middle this morning.
Adam Talley with Talley Insurance.
Yes, that's you.
It's great to be here. Happy Friday.
Did a little bit of a surprise for you guys. So we got a guy coming in that, do you know Eric Bunch?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have the guy from Dadpreneur coming in, Mr. Eric Bunch. And we're going to talk about the dad's perspective, right, of being an entrepreneur, which is interesting because you guys are neither dads, right?
Dog dad. Proud dog dad.
So you'll get to
Not so proud
hear
dog dad.
and feel like what that's about. So I thought this would be such a fun show today to talk about successful entrepreneurs and basically what they have experienced. Like if you could fast track that and shortcut it and go back and actually learn some stuff from that, what would you learn? And so I thought, how fun would it be to actually chime in and pull some of this, like for us to comment on it. So what I did was I pulled stuff actually from the HuffPost. They wrote a really cool article where they interviewed a whole bunch of entrepreneurs and they put together a list of 33 different things that entrepreneurs learned. And I thought, oh my gosh, we're going to talk about that. So fun. What do you think, Leo? Are you excited?
I love it. 33 different things in 1 hour. Usually we usually takes us a whole hour to go through a list of 5 to 7.
Well, we get 2 hours.
And we usually skip one of those along the way.
Yeah, because I was talking to Jeremy, who we had on the show last week, who I'm pretty sure is going to become a show partner and is listening right now. And he was like, so how do you guys plan out your shows? I'm like, well, usually Katrina finds a list of 5 to 7 items, and within an hour, we're lucky to hit all of them.
Well, we got 2 hours, so we'll try to have as much fun as we can.
Yeah, but the sign says we have some guests coming in for the second hour.
We do. I think Jen's coming, not 100% sure. It was an open invite, kind of like, hey, if you can come. Eric's definitely coming. Yep. So before we dive into the content we have for today, one of my questions is, and Leo, or you answer last, Adam. Okay. Leo, you answer next. How old were you when you started your first business? And was that the business that you're in now? And I'll answer them too, just for fun.
Let's go with 17, and it's not the business I'm in now.
So what did you do at 17 to open your own business?
I kind of revived the college newspaper that had been dormant for 15 years.
So tell me about that. I'm going to learn something new about you today in the show. I know it.
So basically, back in college, I didn't go to class, so I needed something to do, and I knew we had a college newspaper, but it had gone defunct. So basically, me and my now business partner, we kind of revived it. And another person who was like not majoring in photography, but really passionate about photography, the three of us kind of revived it. So I was writing 2/3 of a newspaper for the better part of a year.
And how did you turn that into a business?
Well, over time, you got to sell ads.
Right.
You have to grow staff. So it was more of a volunteer business on some aspect of it. But selling ads to be able to print. And then there was distribution. So it's logistics, writing, distribution, where to get content, figuring out how to do press passes, eventually line.
So I got a better question. Like, why are you doing our outlines? Why am I doing the outlines? I'm going to start doing a mastermind with you and make you jump in and help.
I just list of 5 to 7 things. It's pretty simple.
All right. So 17, you picked up the dormant little college press thing and ran with it. What did you do after that?
Wow. So after that, I guess my first real business outside of being in a band, running a band. So you have to do booking, making sure everyone gets paid, make sure you're legit, have insurances.
Do you still play out? You
Not
don't have time
anymore.
for that, right? Yeah.
No. I guess my first real business outside of the band was running a music store.
Which one?
Store. I was a small one down in Fort Myers. It's when Guitar Center put us out of business, but that was my first.
So you might not know this about me, but I worked for Thoroughbred Music.
Oh, wow.
When I was younger. It was like the one little time I had a hiatus from this business and the only time. And I reorganized their entire department. It was so whacked. But anyway, most musicians have heard of Thoroughbred, right? I'm sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. Anyway, the mail order division, I'm the one that started and kind of ran a lot of that.
That was pretty intense back then.
And the guy that was my boss, my big boss, guess what he does now? Sells real estate.
Okay.
Or tries to sell real estate. So what'd you do after that?
So after the music store, I then formed my own like mini radio station, online radio station. So we were.
Pat, are you back there listening? Because you have to. There's a little part if Leo doesn't tell it, I'm going to tell it. Can I tell it?
Go for it.
Yeah, go ahead and tell it. Yeah.
Okay, go. Finish
Oh,
your
by the
story.
way, I can hear your studio line sound great on
good.
Facebook.
That's awesome.
Sounds great.
Thank you. Okay, great.
So at that point, I had formed my own radio station. Again, we were selling ads, collecting interviews from bands, going out there, helping promote the local music scene. Eventually got to the point where we were able to have a streaming of 24 hours a day of music, and we'd have talk shows throughout the day. So it wasn't as intense as the Beasley Get-Up, where it's mostly live radio. Most of it was pre-recorded, and most of it was just... It was fun because I had like certain hours for certain types of shows, and we would randomize the library of music we had. So it was just.
Let me ask you: Did you play any Taylor Swift? Let me hear the artists that you played on that radio station.
We couldn't play Taylor Swift. We had to play locals and independents. We had some record labels that would let us play their music, but for the most part, it was locals and independents.
So Leo, were you in college when this happened? When
No,
you
by
tapped into the radio station and like started using their signal?
Yes.
Pirate radio.
So we were doing pirate
Only
radio.
the engineer
We
could
were
do
doing
that.
pirate radio back in college. So when the newspaper was up and running, we had discovered that we had access to an FM band of radio. So me and someone from
Discovered we had access to it.
So me and someone from the television station that was also revived around the same time as the newspaper, we decided to do some pirate radio, and that was fun for a while. That was actually my first radio experience. So now I'm 19 in college doing pirate radio in the middle of the day. Eventually they found out. They recognized my voice, so they knew who it was. They just didn't know where we were broadcasting from. We had actually broken into one of the old classrooms to set up a mini studio that was abandoned. It was a lot of fun.
They're like, where the heck is that coming from? We can't find it. So I don't even want to know how many businesses you've owned.
Well, right now I only own 4.
Okay. So
Only 4.
Only 4. So which 4? Of course, Barrel Engineering and
Barrel
Inspection.
Engineering and Inspections, and then some real estate companies for investment.
Okay. And how old were you when you started Barrel?
I was substantially older. I was in my mid-30s, early 30s.
Substantially older?
Well, if you're looking at 17, forming a
Compared to, yeah.
So I was in my early 30s when Barrel started up.
And so what was your focus back then? Like, what was your primary thing?
Barrel? Mm-hmm. It was to survive. I mean, any new business.
Right. But I mean, what were you doing the most of?
Home inspections.
Okay.
Yeah, it was one of those things where, as a new business, your first level is survivability.
Of course.
So you think you know what you want to do. You think you know. I mean, it's different if you own like a Menchie's or a Pinkberry and you're like, I'm going to sell yogurt. But when you're doing a service organization where your overhead's really low, you're working out of a bedroom in your house.
Right.
You have
all those costs are down.
Yeah, all your costs are down. You already own a computer. You already own some tools, things of that nature. You pretty much just try and find what people think you're good at. And then you say, yeah, I could do that. And then you go out and do it. So you become known to do something in a service industry. Then that becomes your niche and you run with it. And it takes 2 or 3 years for people to figure that out for you.
Right. So Adam, do you own part of your family's business or is it still dad?
It's still dad.
Okay. So your dad was how old when he started the business? Do you know?
25 when he
Okay.
started it. And he started as a captive nationwide agency. So he worked for Nationwide. They used to have an office off of West Shore back then. And, he worked out of that office for a while. And then they gave him a shot in Brandon, and the rest is history.
So for me, I started my very first business. I was 23 years old. Outside of, some of the other stuff, which we could talk about back then. I'll give you a little snippet of some of my history. I literally worked 3 jobs at one point.
Wow.
Before I bought my first house, I worked 3 jobs. And Thoroughbred was one of them at the time.
Now,
So-
I did have a small business when I was 6 years old, if you want to hear about
You
that.
did?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to
When we
have
come
to
back.
hear about
When we
that.
come back, yeah.
Right after the break. All right, so, and then we're going to talk about, what made you decide to be an entrepreneur and what actually drives you? And I'll answer some of these fun questions as we go. I have a feeling we're not going to get anywhere near 33. So we'll have to pick the good
We
ones.
haven't even gotten to one.
I know, we haven't gotten to one. We have a lot of fun, though, on the show, and we hope you do, too. We hope you're enjoying Tampa Home Talk. Remember, love where you live or I'll fix it. Leo's going to make sure you get a great property. And, of course, Adam's going to make sure you got the insurance on. Our off-air number is 813-377-2775. You can call or text us anytime at that number, 813-377-2775. We'll be back in just a moment.
Well, good morning. Welcome back. This is your host, Leo Kane of Barrel Engineering and Inspection, with Adam Talley of Talley Insurance and Katrina Madewell from Tampa Home Talk and Keller Williams. So, Adam, need to learn more about what you were doing when you were 6 years old to have your own business. Did you take over your dad's insurance company back when you were 6?
Well, no, they don't license you unless you're at least 18, so that wasn't really an option at the time. But my grandparents owned a plant nursery. They owned Armenia Nursery back in the day. And so when I was 6, we'd spend summers there, everything else like that, just running around being kids. And they gave me these little paper bags. So I would go around and collect all the pecans from the pecan trees, put them in the little paper bags, and then I'd sell them to people as they were coming in and out of the store.
So you were basically a lemonade stand, but you were selling nuts.
Yes, it was a pecan stand, if you will, not a lemonade stand.
What was the going price of a bag of pecans back then?
That's a good question. It's hard to remember. I'm sure like $1 or something. We're talking early 90s money. So
You must have made a killing, though. I mean,
I bought a lot of Legos with it.
Adam, let me ask you a question.
Yes,
Where
sir.
was that nursery located?
Off of Armenia.
Armenia, and what was the cross street?
It would have been,
Henry,
maybe.
just north of Hillsboro?
Yeah, there's only one Armenia Nursery.
Well, I spent all my childhood at that nursery. I even worked there.
Really?
Pat's worked everywhere.
What a small world.
Really? So you know my grandfather then, Tony
I sure
Baloney,
do. Oh, yeah.
the one and only.
Yeah. Right next
Wow.
door to there was a lawnmower place there for many years.
Yes.
Nardelli.
how many
Delis.
bags of pecans
That's
did
a
you buy?
small world.
I bet you, Leo, you did the same thing that I did when I was young too, and would sell the Blue Pops or the candy or whatever at school. Did you do that?
No. The only thing I did when I was really young is I guess the apartment building I was living in had a tennis court, and this is back in the day when tennis courts got used. So I would offer to be a ball boy runner,
Oh wow, that's cool.
make $5 an hour.
I know for me, I figured out the whole supply and demand thing early. I was like, if I have gum and Blow Pops and candy and all this stuff at school where it's just not there, then it'd be pretty easy to sell it and make 3, 4, 5 times the profit.
Well, I liked Adam's approach. He basically found garbage on the floor, put it in a bag, and sold it to people.
Yep,
Sorta, yeah.
that's the way to do it. Did you? I don't know if you heard, but Pat used to work for my grandfather.
I did. Yes,
Isn't that
I
crazy?
sure did. I said
Damn.
Pat's worked everywhere.
That's
I'll
how
tell
he
you,
found
because
the
of that
artists.
because of that nursery, I advanced, and there was a store at the corner of Hillsboro and Armenia called Grandway, and because of working at that nursery, I found out about mistletoe, and I used to bag up bags of mistletoe with little red ribbons and sell them to the shoppers coming out of the store because of Armenia Nursery.
Wow.
Pat
You
probably
stole your pecan
I
idea.
know.
he
wow.
probably had the mistletoe and he's like, come here, give me a kiss.
He stole your
I told people it was from Armenia Nursery, high quality.
That's good. That's a compliment to your grandfather's
It is.
nursery.
It is.
And back in the early 90s, mistletoe was very popular because of the Batman Returns movie.
I suppose. Yeah.
You better turn that.
It was a different era
turn
too,
up.
right? So, what made you decide to be an entrepreneur? Do you think it's something people are born with, or do you think it's something that it's this innate ability it's definitely an innate ability that grows, right? But do you think it's something people are born with, or do you think it's a seed that's planted?
I'm a firm believer of Myers-Briggs personality type indexing, and everyone's got one of 16 different personality types, and there are certain personalities that lend themselves more towards entrepreneurship than, let's say, data entry or sales.
I totally agree.
So that being said, I think there are some level of innate abilities, but you still need training. That still needs to be nurtured, and that still needs guidance.
I'm curious, do you think people are born with that, or do you think they develop who they are based on their environment?
I would think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Personally, that's
Yeah.
always been my experience. Is it takes it takes the experience plus the personality to really make whatever you're trying to do go.
Yeah, there's a business saying I go back to, and this is an Ivan Meisner business saying for those BNI people out there. He says you can't train height, which is true. I mean, you got a basketball player. That's you want to put someone in the position of center, and I know there's Leo doing a sports analogy, which is hilarious.
I know,
But
right?
you're doing great, though.
I
got your back on this one. You're doing great.
But you can't train height. So if you need that center to be 6'6" or taller, and you have this really eager, really motivated person, and he's only 5 foot, he's not going to be a center. You got to put him in a different position. You got to use that skill set to his advantage. So same thing with entrepreneurship. You can't train vision. You can align vision.
Right.
So you have to actually have that skill set, that personality type, that I don't want to say intellect level, but that slant towards being extroverted, being thinking, being perception, being judgment. You can't do it if you're sensory. You can't do it if you're feeling, because then you're just, and these are Myers-Briggs words, you can't do entrepreneurship with those easily. You can still do it, but not easily.
So, question for you, and this is for both of you: do you think you can be a great entrepreneur and not a great leader, or do you think you have to be both to be good at?
I do think you can. I think you're going to get tired.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that?
There are technical business owners out there. My competition in home inspection is mostly technical business owners, and they're people that really enjoy the act of inspection. They hate everything else. They hate the marketing. They hate the networking. They hate everything else that gives them the inspection. They just love the inspection.
But let's face it, if you're doing that 20, 30, 40 years later, you're going to get tired.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
Most technical business owners burn themselves out within 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. So I think you can be a good entrepreneur without being a good leader, but and this is I'm gonna talk out of both sides of my mouth, but I think you need to hire smartly and hire somebody that is a good leader.
Yeah.
Which knowing how to hire is being a good leader, but you know what I'm saying.
Some of that stuff on the list is what we have as well, and it's interesting because I just pulled like the little bullet points and then like whatever the leader said, the key points they talked about it, and I figured we could chat about it as well. And this is some of the stuff I've learned through leadership myself as well, and I feel like it's one of those things you never stop growing. There's always more to learn. Always. You feel the same way, Leo?
Well, I often go back to the movie Somm, which was on Netflix. It's still on Netflix, but it takes place in the wine country, the act of becoming a master sommelier, which is people who recommend wine. Sorry for all you somms out there. I've just really downplayed what you do. You do a lot more. But for the most part, what people see...
The good news is we're not in Napa.
Yeah, well, what you see is those are the people in the restaurants that help pair that perfect wine with your food. Where I was going with this is once you become a master, once you become the top tier, they all say the same thing. Because you have to study for thousands of hours and pass countless tests. They're like, once I became a master, and I'm not, I'm just quoting them. Once they became a master, that's when the true learning began.
Right. There's a lot to be said for that. 100% agree. Because then you're learning to be a leader, right? Like you master something, now you're more than likely learning to be a leader so you can help others work in that same space. That's what I see in a lot of the circles I run.
Yeah, and that deals with the Maslow hierarchy of needs. You eventually get to the point of self-actualization, which is that top tier. And once you're self-actualized, you can actually help society. You actually value society more than yourself because you're comfortable enough with yourself to hit that point.
Yes, there's a lot of growth that happens in that place, I would say. All right, so shall we get to number one?
Yeah, let's get to number one. But I do love all this psychology talk.
I was about to say this is the psychology hour with Leo Payne.
I spend a lot of time on this. I read probably nothing but self-help books. Like I don't really read a whole lot of other science fiction type stuff. I just don't. So I just read and study and watch a lot of videos on this sort of stuff. And
this all ties into my master's degree, so I can talk for days on this.
I love it. Me too. I'm excited about it.
When are we going to get to the bathtub reglazing?
You know, Pat says that because it was like one of the worst radio shows we ever did. It just was. The guest just was not very good on air. But he does an amazing job with bathtub reglazing.
But once you have your bathtub reglazed, look at that puppy shine.
Okay, Leo. Thanks.
Actually, a sidebar of the sidebar to the sidebar. If you have a bathtub with grime, like that, you get that black grime or that red grime on the tub, what I recommend is making a slurry of vinegar and baking soda.
Yes.
Make
That
sure
works for
it's
everything.
heavier on the baking soda and put some vinegar in there. It turns into a paste. You can rub it on and it will take off that black grime. I call it a slurry.
It
Sweet.
works with a lot of stuff, too.
Yeah.
We do that at our house.
You can use it on your teeth too.
And you can use it in your science fair projects to build a volcano.
I'm sure you did
Yes.
that.
I've done a lot. I've
He
done a
speaks
lot
from
of baking soda
experience.
volcanoes. Those are awesome.
So the number one thing on the list from one of the entrepreneurs was welcome detours and failures with open arms. Lots to be said for that, right?
Absolutely.
So what's a time when you had a detour and a failure? And you're like, oh, I learned so much from that.
Failures are constant. I mean, that's they often say to be a land developer, you're not a true land developer until you fail 3 or 4 times. And yeah, failures happen all the time. You just have to learn from them. I find that with the employees, they learn more from a 100-year-old house with 1,000 defects than they do from a 5-year-old house with 10 defects.
Oh, yeah.
You learn from your failures, you grow from your failures, and it's just taking that information to help not do it again.
So when we come back after the break, I want to hear, and I got a really big one that comes to mind first, and I'll share it. I'll throw myself right under the bus, but I want you guys to do the same thing too. I want to know about what's one thing that you're like, oh my gosh, this is the worst. Like something that you're like, made you maybe even rethink being an entrepreneur or rethink what you did in your career. Okay. So you got a minute to think about that. Rolling into the break. Our off-air number is 813-377-2775. Again, you can call or text us anytime if you want to catch up with us, 813-377-2775.
And welcome back to Tampa Home Talk. This is Adam Talley with Talley Insurance, joined by Katrina Madewell
That's
with
me.
Keller Williams and Leo Kane of Barrel Project Engineering
Yo.
and Inspections. And today we're talking all about entrepreneurship.
I know it's
Hey,
so fun.
Can we talk a little bit about the Panama Canal?
Oh, sure.
Oh,
What are we
yeah.
gonna talk
I
about?
just
wealth-
saw it.
I'm a wealth
Panama
of
Canal was
information.
awesome.
Okay,
on the
good. Tell
canal.
me, because that's one of my stops on my cruise.
Okay.
Partial.
You're
Transit.
stopping at the canal.
Partial. Transit.
Okay.
Wow.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know. You're
Well,
going
this
to
is
have fun.
Pat's conversation. Let's let him lead it.
Yeah, what you got, Pat?
Shoot from the hip. Go.
No, the only thing I got about the Panama Canal is that's where Katrina's going, and she's going on a vacation, leaving us here. She's going to be gone for 2 weeks, and that's what I know about the Panama Canal.
And I'm also going to Limon in Costa Rica. That's a new port. for us.
Yeah, just rub
Limon's
it in. Just
beautiful.
keep rubbing it in.
Panama Canal was. We were just there 2 weeks ago.
Guess
It
what
was
else,
awesome.
Pat? We're going to be platinum on this cruise.
You know, her mic's going off. You know, if I turn off her mic, all the mics go off. So
You're
Yes.
turning my mic off?
So is there?
I want to.
Is there a
Oh,
difference
thanks.
now that Panama owns the canal and the U.S. has given it back? Have you seen a difference?
I've never been there, so I don't know anything.
So we went through all the museums and everything, and probably the main difference was the U.S. ran it at like a zero, just tried to zero
Profit.
break even. Excuse me, that's what I was looking for. And there was a lot of friction between the U.S. and the Panamanians when they were because they controlled both ends of the canal. Now that after 1999, so when January 1st, 2000, we gave it back to them, and then from that point on, they've been charging a lot more to go through. So now they'll charge up to $800,000 a ship to go through the canal.
Whereas before they were charging.
I don't know.
We need context.
Did you fly there, or did you?
Yeah, we flew there. It's only like 3 hours from Orlando.
And how much was the flight? Reasonable?
We took Spirit, and
Oh.
it was actually it wasn't too bad because we upgraded. You can upgrade to the nobody can see
To
me, but
real
the
seats?
the first class of Spirit, which was only like $34 more dollars a person, and they were nice.
But you have to think. Okay, so $800,000 to get a whole cargo ship of 4K TVs through the Panama Canal versus having to
Go
float
all
all
takes
the
weeks.
way around the tip of South America to do the same thing.
Well, it's time, and then think about the gas to go all
Yeah.
the way around.
Mostly time and.
I need to do some more homework on this. Like, I don't even know really much about
Go to
where
the
we're going.
museum when you go. Although if you go to the museum, you don't have to sit
Do we-
through the
I don't
movie.
even know
It
if we
wasn't
get
worth
off.
it.
Do you get the Teddy Roosevelt speech about the Panama Canal there?
We did not.
Oh,
we did
that's
not. It was
classic.
very Panama centric.
Oh, of course, at this point, because they've taken it over.
Indeed. But I will say, Panama City was one of the most modern skylines I've ever seen. It
Really?
was so impressive.
At
It was-
$800,000 a ship.
Well, hey, give it to their government for putting it back into the city. There was so much construction going on. It was ridiculous.
It's a feat event. Did you learn about the lock system?
Oh,
and how
yeah.
they-
Oh,
so
yeah. We
there's
saw a ship go through.
A lot of engineering that you learned about. I'm kinda
Lots of
jealous.
engineering.
Tell
I'm
us
really
the
jealous.
background story of that in a short little version.
the way that they dredged it, and they have a lock system that
Yes.
allows water to move into certain places so ships can move through in certain chunks. So otherwise it would just kind of overflow or not have enough water in it for the
Wow.
ships. I mean, it's a very complex. You like got 2 moving dams basically.
Wow.
And
That's
2
awesome.
is an understatement. There's like 30.
Yeah.
All the stuff that goes behind that the layperson like me would probably not ever pay attention to.
Well, along the same lines, it was funny. I started watching the HBO series Chernobyl, and everyone knows about the
Yeah, yeah.
Chernobyl incident. It's interesting to learn more about it, but we're halfway through episode 2, and my wife turns to me and is like, "How does a nuclear reactor work?" And I'm like, "That's a great question." I start to explain it, and sure enough, there's a scene in a helicopter where one of the head military guys turns to the head physicist and like, "You need to explain how this thing." He had a garbly voice like the Kia guy, and basically, yeah, dude. So he basically says, "Explain to me how the fission reactor works," and in 90 seconds, the scientist explains it in a way that most normal people can understand. And
That is a very scary and depressing series.
don't no spoil. I'm
Very.
only in episode 2 of 3 so far.
Very scary.
Spoiler alert: the reactor melts down.
No, it doesn't actually. Spoiler alert. The Chernobyl incident, because everyone knows of the incident, but everyone thinks that the reactor had a meltdown. It didn't. It actually had a core explosion, which is a big difference between a meltdown.
Oh goodness.
Meltdown is a shock wave that destroys all of Europe. An explosion is just something that contaminates 200 miles. Or we'll see. I want to see their spin on it. The show is awesome. I highly recommend it. HBO is not paying me to say this.
I don't watch TV.
Now that Game of
No, you
Thrones is
should.
over, HBO has gone bankrupt, so hopefully Chernobyl and John Oliver can keep them afloat.
The new Watchmen show looks like it's gonna be
Yeah,
pretty
that's
good.
not till December.
I know. Okay.
You guys watch way too much TV. I'm just saying.
I don't know how to read, so I have to watch TV.
Okay, fine.
My wife forces me to watch these miniseries because she likes miniseries because they're complete stories and they're usually better told than normal television. So I watch those with her.
Makes sense.
Has she made you watch Big Little Lies yet?
I do not watch that. That's a girls' night thing.
It is.
They grab some wine. They go watch Little Big Lies. I go play some video games.
Little Big Lies. Anyways,
Sounds
back
lovely.
back to
How are
entrepreneurial
we ever
ship.
going to transition?
Have we
to this? I
made
don't
it
even know.
through number 1 of 33
I don't
yet?
even. We're just going to talk about whatever we want to talk about this hour. Apparently, that's just the way it's going
We're
to go
talking
down.
about entrepreneurs. We're talking about how entrepreneurs have some kind of, and it's got to be on the list, how they diversify so they're not all business.
Yes.
Is that, what number is that?
So
they-
let me find
They do
out.
stuff that's not all business to stay sane.
I'm not going to look
Yes.
through this. Hold on. I'm going to skip through it. But
And is there one on the list for, and I'm a big proponent of this, is to be successful, you should surround yourself with people that are more successful.
it's in there. Yes.
Yeah.
It's in there as well.
I
Okay, so-
agree. Because what's the saying? You're the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know.
Then we're 3 of the 5.
I heard
so-
that this morning on the re-air of Business Rockstars. I don't know if you heard it, but they were saying how if you want to, like, if you're in the millionaire bracket, or that's where you're going, actually hang out with billionaires.
Yeah.
Or study billionaires.
I always want to be.
You got any of them lying around?
I'll look for them.
I always want to be the dumbest, poorest person in the room
I know.
because I can only be all ships rise. Like here's Panama Canal thing.
But I
all
guess the
ships
better
rise.
question is, like, how do you even connect to that network, right? Like, how do you go seek out the billionaires to shadow?
There's different ways to do it. I mean, you can network in groups like BNI, Partners in Network, RGA, Ken and Greg, if you're listening. But yeah, there's networking groups. You can do that to find the other business owners. There's Chamber of Commerce's,
Rotary Club.
Rotary Club, Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, in Tampa, if you want to meet the richest people in Tampa, the Boys and Girls Club's the way to do it.
Wow, I never would have pegged that.
Yeah, my friend who does insurance, not the type that Adam does, but does condominium insurance for buildings. He was
We do
suggested to
that
join
too,
the
by the
Boys and Girls Club so he can meet that person that's redoing all of Channelside.
Cool.
Interesting.
Love it.
We
Love it.
do
Love it.
insurance
Love it.
on condos too, by the way. I know.
I didn't plug his name.
Share
That's
it
right.
around.
Didn't plug any names.
That's okay.
So one of the
plenty
things
to
too
go
they
around.
talked about, and I know you'll get this: successful businesses require 100% attention. Everything else is a distraction. Isn't that interesting? Especially in the startup phase. You
Oh,
can
this-
think about that.
Yeah. I mean, back when I was starting up Barrel, I was not with my wife at the time, but yeah, I got broken up with constantly because I'm second to the business. I'm like, yeah, I need to put
Yes.
food on the table.
Yeah, conversation in our house too, so I get it.
Work-life balance is very important.
It's hard though. It's hard.
When in a startup phase, I mean, when you're in survivability and you're trying to discover who you are, you got to do what you got to do.
So the comment that came out of this from the entrepreneur that they interviewed said, successful entrepreneurs don't do the minimum for their company. They constantly work to grow it, evolve it, and prepare for the future. Very well said, I thought. So I really like that. So your company's focus comes with trial and error. So one of the big piece they take away, they said have the clarity of focus. It's so easy to get distracted in today's environment.
I can so relate to that. It's back in the day, survivability will take on any types of inspections. Now we have 11 different inspection types. If it doesn't fit in one of those boxes, we say we don't do it and we refer it to our competition. Because I don't want to spend 40 to 80 hours to learn how to do something we might do 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, makes sense.
I'd rather spend 40 to 80 hours marketing on something we do 1,800 times a year.
Well, it's the difference between survivability, stability, significance, success. Like there's this whole hierarchy in the way you progress as a business owner and as an entrepreneur. What about mistakes surfacing as new opportunities? And I think I kind of talked about this a little bit on one where I said, welcome detours and failures with open arms. So let's go back to that question. What's the number one thing that you're like, oh my gosh, this is awful. This was a mistake. It's probably one of the worst things could have happened that made you possibly rethink about leaving?
I guess starting off, the negative reviews. I mean, this is going to tie back to a Netflix series called Black Mirror. There's an episode called Nosedive. And it's in the future, and everyone's got a Google Glass implanted in their head, but you rate people and interactions. So every time you take an Uber, you rate that person. Every time you go to a restaurant, you're on Yelp, you rate that thing.
We're almost there.
Yeah, we're almost there. So that's what makes Black Mirror so scary is it's like we're there. This is rating people as you're just walking by them and stuff and interactions. But once you start to get a negative rating, other people start to give you a negative rating because you see the negative rating. So starting out, I was always scared of getting a negative review. I'm still scared of it, but now it's not crippling. Back in the day, it was crippling.
No, but surely you made one big mistake or something happened or you didn't pay attention to something and you had this big whatever surface.
I'm done whatever surface or
just a big one. I'll give you a prime example.
Yeah, I need an example.
I used to share this story a lot when I did the show with Darren Mish. I know Pat's heard the story before, but I told you I started my own business at 23. I opened my company as a correspondent lender, which means I had to have a minimum net worth with audited financials. So it wasn't it was legit. So with that, well, it's not like a startup, right? Where you can work in your basement, or your office or whatever. So anyway, we opened up as a lender, and one of the things that happened in that experience, again, I was 23 when I opened my business. I was 25 when I had my oldest daughter, Madeline. And so what happened was the bookkeeper kind of got ran off, wasn't paying attention to the details, was just in the grind, right, as they say. And the next thing I know, my business partner that I went into business with, which was family, by the way, and that's one of the things on the list, being co-aligned with the people that you go in business with, decided to pull a lot of her money that she had out of the business and basically say, oh, I want to do something else. Part of it was, at the time, you could work under someone else's license. So that's what happened. Everybody was working under my license. She couldn't pass the state exam. And so that was part of the reason why she took her money out. Well, then combined with some other stuff, right, like the bookkeeper running off, what I didn't realize, which came later, was I had a lady from the IRS that showed up at my office and said, by the way, I thought it was not real. And she says, you owe us payroll taxes. I said, what? What do you mean we owe you payroll taxes? We owed at the time about $25,000 in payroll taxes to the IRS. Back then, that was a lot.
I was about to say, what year was that? That's $2 billion.
For me right now, that would feel like $100,000 or more right now. It would feel like that. And it was so, and mind you, I'm about 8 months pregnant, so I'm out to here. It was an IRS lady.
So you're care and stress free at the moment,
Well, we'll talk about that when we come back in a minute. We'll talk about how that experience was and what I learned from it, because I learned so much from that experience. We'll be back in a minute.
Well, good morning. Welcome back. This is Leo Kane with Barrel Engineering and Inspection, joined with Adam Talley of Talley Insurance and Katrina Madewell of Keller Williams. We are dancing around a list of 33 things that entrepreneurs should discuss.
Let's face it, we just talk too much. It's going to be really hard to get through a list
We tell
of 33.
a good story. Like
we could blow through it, it'd be boring.
Any good business book, any one of those 33 would be the entire book.
Could be, yes.
That whole paragraph that explains the one of the 33 would be basically then ghostwritten the rest of the book, which is all parables and stories.
Yes.
And that's what we're doing. We've talked about 2 or 3 of these, and we've told a whole bunch of supporting stories.
So going back to my story, when I was 25, I owed the IRS money, a lot of money. At 25, when your business...
and you didn't know Darren yet.
I didn't know Darren. I was scared to wits. I wish I did know Darren back then.
He would have got that down to like $2,500.
I can tell you, like, I was so scared. Like, first of all, I didn't think the lady was real. And then she showed me her badge and I realized she was. And then essentially the long story short was she kind of took pity on me. I'm lucky I got a little female lady that came in and she knew I was a young business owner. I was scared. I had no idea I even owed the payroll taxes. And I was like, oh my gosh. So what I learned from that experience, because it couldn't have happened at the worst possible time, of course, I was pregnant, right? So I got like no time off with my daughter. We really did not have the capacity, the bandwidth, or the business to even figure out how to begin to repay that. But what we did was we sold our house, downsized. We did, like, immediately sold our house, downsized, and tried to get out of that mess as quickly as possible. And I learned 2 things from that experience. Number 1, our business was set up so wrong. We got bad advice from the CPA right out of the gate. They set us up as a C corporation right out of the gate with these huge salaries.
Yeah.
It just didn't make any, like, now knowing what I know, that was just the worst advice ever.
Could you reclassify?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I figured out what's wrong with by the way, we're coming out of the headphone jack here, going into a headphone jack on the laptop. We need to be coming out of the headphone jack here on the comm racks and going into the microphone jack.
Oh, that's easy. Did you plug it in?
No, I just realized it while I was sitting there. Because we're going from headphone to headphone, so
You're
obviously
right.
there's no sound.
Well, we have a
When
whole,
you
we
say
have
that,
a
I
whole
feel
other
so
hour.
dumb.
So
Yeah, so during the next break, I will
We'll fix it.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I just had an epiphany of why it wasn't working properly.
But if we do that, is it actually going to take it away, or do you know?
No, what I'll do is I'll come out of the headphones. So the headphones for the comm racks will be the microphone for the laptop, so they'll be able to hear everything.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome.
Great. All right. So
still talking mistakes. I
real quick,
suppose.
yeah, just what I learned from that experience was, A, we were classified wrong right out of the gate. So get some good, solid CPA advice, legal advice when you set up your business. Didn't do that at 23, didn't even know that. Mind you, Google wasn't around. The internet wasn't really around at that time like it is now. So I feel like the younger generation has such a shortcut, right?
Right.
Where we had to like look through encyclopedias and stuff or ask people. It was just so different.
You didn't have web crawler back then?
No, we didn't have any of that
the
stuff.
first search engine, the web crawler with a little spider for the logo.
Yeah, but we didn't have any of that stuff. So anyway, I learned that. And the other thing I learned too is don't turn a blind eye to your books.
Oh, no.
Like pay attention to everything that's going on. Even if you're not doing it, you always need to know what's going on. Look at your stuff.
Absolutely. My biggest lesson that I've learned was time management, right? I've been in a bunch of different organizations. I usually get asked to, take on a leadership role, board of directors, something like that. And my biggest thing was I was getting stretched so thin, but not getting the results from it, So.
But you can't manage time. You can only manage yourself.
Exactly. So that was the biggest thing that I learned was looking at where my time was going and what I was receiving from it, right? Am I spending so much time where I'm only receiving X amount of dollars versus kind of like you said, repurposing that time and putting it towards where you're going to make the most money.
So when I say that, Leo, that experience for me, like that was the one where if I was going to go get a job, that probably would have been the point that I went and got a job, but I didn't. Stuck with it. So for you,
it'd still be those negative reviews.
That's the biggest mistake that you made.
No,
that's it.
That's the thing that makes me want to quit. That's where I thought the question was being asked.
That's fair enough.
Because you do, like, we're out there, we're on a house for 3.5 hours. We do a great job. We find 60, 70 defects. We put together a great report. We've done our best effort. And then there's one thing that we either miss, or there's one thing that the client thinks we miss that's in the report.
Which, by the way, you have that buyback guarantee.
That doesn't help on the
review.
They think we've missed something and we haven't. And then we get a negative review, and we put all this effort, and we're not out there to just make money and
So
like,
how
take
do you-
advantage of people. We're out there to give them the product, and then when you do all of that, you've done your best effort. It is good enough. It's better than what your competition would have produced.
So how do you combat that?
If
If one of you guys made a mistake, how do you fix that?
well, then we make a mistake, it's different. I mean, we have the porch handyman credit for the small stuff, and we have the buyback guarantee for the large stuff. The porch credit can be used for anything, but we often say it should be used in case there's something minor that may have
What's
been
the
overlooked.
porch credit?
Basically, there's an organization called Porch out there that does like a Home Advisor or a Craigslist. They'll pair you up with contractors to get work done, and they give you a credit off the service. So $100 off an electrician bill or $100 off the plumber bill if you use them to find that plumber.
So here's the thing. I had an agent that worked for me, and the client was referred. Another agent had actually worked with that customer to help them find a property. Had the home inspection done. This was pre-Leo. And really, I felt like it had a lot of stuff. Like it was too much for a first-time home buyer. Part of the challenge for me is I don't want to stand in the way of someone buying their dream home, right? Like I'm going to be 100% transparent with them. I'm going to tell them I feel like they should move on. The guy was in a construction related field and really kind of felt like, oh, we can handle everything. I love the house. And I think that's what happened. He really kind of sold his wife on it, but it was too much. Like there were so many things. When there's defects being flagged by the appraiser because it's not passing an FHA inspection, there's a lot of defects.
That's a problem.
Yeah. And it used to be a lot more picky than it is now. But the things they were flagging were big. And so I remember literally standing in the house with them telling them, we can find you another house. You don't have to buy this one. I remember telling them that. And they went ahead on and bought it anyway. So what happened was this particular client ended up leaving a negative review online. She left us a 1-star. And it happened on my daughter's 18th birthday. And this was like a year almost after she closed. And I'm like, what the heck? I was so mad about it. I tried to call her and then she didn't take my call and then I was just mad. So what did I do? I responded online to the review, like just as transparent as I could be. Like what would I say to that person if they were standing right in front of me? So I figured, if I look at a negative review and I see how the owner responds, there's a lot to be said for that, right? Because you're not going to please everybody. So when I responded to that and the lady kind of realized and I think she saw some stuff on Facebook, how it kind of ruined my day a little bit. She agreed to meet with me and talk to me. So I went to her house and I met her. And long story short, I made it right. And she fixed the review.
Nice.
And, I think there's things you can do to make things right. And that's probably the bigger purpose, right? And the bigger reason in what you should do to make things right. All right. Hour number 1's up already of Tampa Home Talk. Thank goodness we have another hour.
4 or 5.
All right.
813-377-2775. That's 813-377-2775.
And we'll be back in just a minute with Eric Bunch. So stick around.